Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Today we are going to take these ordinary HS1177 style FPV cameras and turn them into night vision cameras that will be sensitive to infrared lights, so you can fly at night with the help of infrared lights or plainly see better at dusk even without the help of infrared lights. We are also going to be taking a look at these infrared illuminator LED boards, and I'll show you how to power them up and attach them to an FPV racer. And we'll check out what the results are going to be like during the daytime sunlight and at dusk after the sun goes down and late at night when the stars are out and about. So first we have the B-Fight 210 here and the Fury B Fire Dancer here. Now they both came with different versions of the HS1177 style FPV cameras, and they both came with the infrared sensitivity blocked. Now the camera on the B-Fight 210 had its IR sensitivity blocked on the camera sensor on the motherboard itself, and not on the rear of the camera lens. This is the camera lens that I just took off from the B-Fight 210 here. And as you can see on the inside, there's the camera sensor, and there is a glass protecting the camera sensor. And there was another glass plate on top of that glass protecting the camera sensor, which was a little rainbow colored glass plate, and I've removed it. And this is how that little glass plate looks like. I kind of broke off the tip of it, but that's how it looks like. Here's another camera that is very similar to the B-Fight 210's FPV camera. So just need to take off the back plate, a couple of screws holding the back plate, and the motherboard will come right off. And you see that little glass plate that is rainbow colored? Well, that is the glass plate that I removed. Now here's a motherboard that I've already removed the glass plate on, and as you can see, there's just a glass plate protecting the sensor. Whereas on this one, there is another rainbow colored like glass plate on top of the glass plate that is protecting the sensor. So what I did was use my soldering iron, and I used a fine tip, and I just kind of placed it right on the corner of that IR block glass plate, heated it up because it's just glued on there, so all four sides, and I try to pop it off, and I use a little razor blade to grab it and pop it off, and that's why I have a little broken corner of it. But that's how you remove it. And once you have removed it, put the motherboard back, put the back plate back on, and put those two screws on and readjust the focus, and it should be good to go. Now the camera on the Fire Dancer, however, came with the IR block on the camera lens and not on the motherboard. So as you can see in the rear of the camera lens, there used to be a glass plate, a rainbow colored glass plate, and here is that rainbow colored glass plate. This is the IR block. So all you have to do is remove that from the rear of the camera lens. And here I have another camera that is very similar to this camera, almost identical. So just remove the back plate, and taking a look at the motherboard, as you can see, there is no rainbow colored glass plate on top of that glass plate protecting the sensor. So the IR block is actually in the rear of the camera, as you see there. I haven't removed this one yet. So all you got to do is just heat up your soldering iron and put the tip of the soldering iron on the glue itself. Sometimes they have all four sides glued on. This one just has two. Just heat it up and just pop it right off. And once you pop it off, just reinsert the camera lens into the camera housing and refocus, and you are good to go with this variation of the camera to remove the IR block. So they are now both IR sensitive and ready for night flights. So you can fly these during the day still yet, but the colors will be compromised. But now you are able to fly these without any help from infrared light source, especially at the time just after the sun goes down with just minimum amount of daylight, since they are now sensitive to just about any amount of light, and of course fly it in the dark with the help of infrared lights. So to help with night vision, here we have the infrared illuminator LED boards. Now I got these from an eBay seller. The link to purchase down below. It has a 48 infrared LED lights, and it is light sensitive, so it will turn on and off automatically. And this panel is basically made to enhance a security CCTV camera. So you could darken the light sensor so it always stays on to eliminate the refocusing of the FPV cameras when the LED lights turn on and off due to going from a brighter lit area to a darker area, as you will see in a minute. Now they will come in two versions, a 850 nanometer version and a 940 nanometer version. Now you will have better results with a 850 nanometer version, and this is the 850 nanometer version I'll be testing it out with. Now, here on the left is the sample of a 850 nanometer version and a sample of the 940 nanometer version on the right. Now it comes in at a cost of $4.38 each, or you can get two for $8.69 at the time of this video recording. Now it comes with a power cable, a PH2 connector power cable to a banana connector, as you will see in a brand new one. And here's the power cable. So it comes with this banana connector on one end and a PH2 connector on the other end. And on the board, you have the PH2 connector as well as a 1.2 connector, PH connector. Now, I guess you could power it up with the provided cable, or you could use the 1.2 millimeter PH connector. The input voltage is 12 volts at 1 amp. So to power it up, you will need at least a 3-cell battery or higher. Now with a 2-cell battery, it will not work, but it does work with a 4-cell battery. Now I would not recommend it for the longevity of these LED lights. So cut the cable to expose the red and the black wires to the length that you desire. Now what I did was I soldered on header pins to each of the wires, shrink wrap them individually, and shrink wrap them all together. Now you can also solder on a 3-cell female balance connector instead, but it will then limit it to be used only with a 3S battery. So this way it can be used on a 3S, 4S, 5S, or even a 6S battery. So connect the red wire to the red wire on the balance connector of the battery, and connect the black wire to the third black wire away from the red wire on the balance connector to supply it with 3S power, which is 11.1 volts. So if you connect the red wire to the red wire and use the first black wire connector, it will be 3.7 volts. Then the next one will be 7.4 volts, 11.1 volts, 14.8 volts, and so on. So plug in the red wire to the red wire here, and the black wire to the third port on the balance connector to power up the LED lights. A foam pad was hot glued to the back of the panel to seal off all of the exposed solder joints, and also a piece of sponge to give the panel a bit of an upward tilt to match the camera angle tilt. Now, one advice is to limit your camera angle tilt so you don't go too fast in the dark, since the infrared lights are good for illuminating up to about 30 meters. So to attach it to an FPV racer, first attach the battery in place, whether it is a bottom mounted battery quadcopter or a top mounted battery quadcopter. Now I've been just using some rubber bands to attach it to the battery or in the front of the battery, since it has a flat area for the panel to rest itself on. So I've been placing it just like that in the front here, center it with the little foam on the bottom so it gives it a slight upward tilt angle. And forget about the power cable for now. So get a rubber band right around that length and just start wrapping the panel onto the battery itself. So one here, one there, like that. And I've been using like 3 of them just in case one of the rubber bands break. So just like that, and center it on the camera. So that's how it is going to look like from the bottom here, slightly above the battery. So when it lands, you're not scraping the front of the LED panel. So just like that, guys. And maybe hide the rubber bands in that little groove there. Just like that. And what is left is the power cable. So what I've been doing is just placing the power cable here. And if your battery strap is long enough, you can just wrap it around to secure that power cable so it doesn't get messed around with. So I've been just using another little rubber band instead to wrap it onto the battery itself, just like that. So the power cable is secured. Now you can go ahead and power it up, and then you are good to go. So for a top mounted battery, it is basically the same as you see here. I'm using the same rubber band style, mounting it to the battery, except it is mounted on the top. And I gave it the tilt angle to match the camera tilt angle. And I used the same pink rubber band to hold down the power cable. So use your imagination and your know-how to mount it in place. Maybe a 3D printed mount perhaps could save you time when switching out batteries. So let me know what ideas you may have that could work in the comments down below. Okay, so here is a flight during the daylight sunlight with the Fire Dancer 215. Now notice everything is pretty much washed out and there's not much color to be had here. Now the trees are getting a lot of green leaves, but it looks more like white instead. It is like you are seeing everything in a photo negative, but you are still able to see everything and still able to fly. So it is about 5:30 p.m. and the sun is super bright still. It's not bad actually, because you are still able to see everything in pretty good detail and you are still able to fly. Okay, so here is the B-Fly 210 about the same time of day. Now notice, even though the IR block has been removed on this camera, it is doing a lot better than the Fire Dancer. The trees are still green and it is only slightly washed out. It is as if nothing's changed, just slightly duller in color than it was previously. Yeah, I got to do something about that VTX. It was fine until I got into a crash, and now it's just blinking away. I tried everything, but just doesn't seem to work. Another day, another project. Okay, so here is the Fire Dancer once again, but now the time is about 8 p.m. and the sun has already set and the light sensitive lamp has already turned on and the security cameras are now in night mode as well. And they are the infrared LED light night mode. And as you can see, the infrared lights on the quadcopter are turning on facing darkness and turning off when facing the horizon where the sun has just set. So it is a perfect time to see it in action, where it turns off and then turns on depending on the areas of brightness and areas of darkness. So it is on right now, but facing the horizon where the sun has set, it turns off. And once I turn around, turns on again. So it helps out a little bit, half in, half out. So right here is pretty dark and you are able to see everything because of the LED lights, the infrared LED lights, and right on the tree as well. Off and then turns on. So it does help out starting from about this time of the day when it is bright enough and yet it is dark enough. If it was a regular FPV camera, I wouldn't be able to fly because it'll be too dark. But with a Twilight camera, you should be able to fly at this time. But with a regular FPV camera, it will be pretty impossible to fly at this time. Okay, so here is the B Fight 210 once again at about the same time, but notice it is much better than the Fire Dancer. Although the infrared lights do go on and off, depending on the areas of brightness and darkness, you can still make out the trees as being green and everything else is still somewhat at their natural colors. Okay, now it is about 10 p.m. and it is completely dark outside and the sky is black and the stars are out and about. Notice the effect of the lamp post light has on the infrared LED lights turning on and off. It took a split second and it may cause disorientation if you are not careful. So like I said earlier, you may want to darken the light sensor on the LED panel so the LED lights stay on all of the time. So you can still fly at night with minimum amount of lighting, but you can now clearly see the maximum illumination distance of these infrared LED lights. Now it is too dark to see anything here, with a naked eye, but I am able to still fly. It is better to have something in front of you at all times than not to have anything in front of you to reflect off the LED lights. All right, so here is the B-Fight 210 at 10 p.m. also. And again, it does better than the Fire Dancer for some reason. Must be a better lens on the camera. And it even does better at readjusting to light changes from the light post light. Now, you could also make out a tiny bit of color, but majority is black and white. And it is also better to have something in front of you to reflect off the infrared light than not to have anything in front of you. So there you have it, the infrared night vision FPV. Hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making this video. I had a lot of fun making this video, and now I am flying at night as well. So thank you so much for tuning in and watching. Stay safe and fly safe, everyone, and we'll see you again next time.